Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cadshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Justin Jones-Fosu. He is a dad, the founder of Work Meaningful, and author. And his most recent book is called I Respectfully Disagree. Can you say hi, Justin?
Hey y'all, how y'all doing?
I really appreciate you taking the time. I love talking to authors and their books. In my understanding, this book, your most recent book, is about to challenge the reader, right? To focus on building bridges with people rather than just, separating and building barriers. And so, what prompted you to write this book? I always love to know the backstory of what prompted authors to write a book.
Yeah, actually it's twofold. The first started with my mom, all right? And so my mom was one of the first black female air traffic controllers in the Air Force. And I remember growing up, she would tell me and my brother the story. Actually I interviewed her hearing the story about like, what, Mom, why'd you take us to events we disagreed with? Why'd you take us to events we didn't know a lot about? And later on, she was like, Justin, I remember she was stationed in Japan for 2 years. And she was like, I didn't want you and your brother to be like some soldiers that I experienced, that they never left home base. And they didn't get to experience the beauty of cultures and people around them. And so that led me into this whole concept around what we call the inclusive mindset and just about drawing people together. And so I would do these workshops, presentations, and I would always make this statement in inclusive mindset presentations about, that we can vehemently disagree with someone's ideology and yet passionately pursue their humanity. And everybody be like, "Ooh, there's always like audible gas, like, oh yeah, it's good." And people come up to me afterwards and like, Justin, I really love the quote. They would often like say it wrong, but they the essence of it was real. And, and they would say, "But how do you do it?" Or they would say, "But what if they think this? Or what if they believe this? Or what if they say this?" And so this really became the answer to many people asking how to do it and or challenging the premise of the statement about what if they say this, so that's where I respectfully disagree came and was birthed out of.
Okay. A lot of it is about just, I see it as understanding different perspectives, right? And communicating it properly. That's so important. I think that people, before we got on this call or before hit record, I think people are just so negative for some reason. And I don't know why they are. Is it they're afraid to think? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I think there's multiple reasons, right? There are some people who are afraid. There are some people who I think social media has heightened
Yeah,
the disability to hear other people's perspectives because we become the author in the monologue. I think it's the comfort of knowing. I love Carol Dweck's work, and we bring in a lot of that work around mindset. And she talks about these growth versus fixed-based mindsets, and that fixed-based mindset they only want to do things that they're good at, especially compared to other people, that they look at not knowing something as a negative to who they are, rather than they just don't know it yet. And so just a myriad of different things. And lastly, it's the brain, right? Our brains are actually wired this way. We tell the story about if, Monday through Friday you take this exit and one day you're supposed to go straight, what do? You take the exit because your brain wants to conserve energy for things it thinks it doesn't know. And
right.
so what we end up doing is categorizing for future use, and then we end up taking the exit on people. So I think there's a lot of things at play. But our goal is no matter where people come to the conversation, that they leave with just a little bit more progress towards more respectful disagreement.
Right. I like that. Respectfully disagree. And especially one of the things that is so toxic, I should say toxic, it always has been, is politics.
Mm,
For some reason, I'm not into that, but I just
yeah,
notice the media focuses so much. I don't know why that is, on the negative aspect too.
I know. I used to be in the media, so uh,
Right.
yeah, I know. I mean, I remember I used to host a radio show for 3 years, NPR affiliate, And I remember we would have some really good shows about education, criminal justice reform, and da da da. And yeah, we get callers that called in, but it was when we had the really big, juicy stories that I didn't too much care for, that everybody called in and lit up. And I just realized, it was one of the reasons that I stopped the radio show, even though we were doing well, was because that's what draws listeners. That's what draws views. That's what draws things. And so it's the most salacious, it's the most out there highlightable story that people were like, oh, what did they say? What happened? And I realized that a majority of people aren't in that space. A majority of people want to operate in a space of like they have loved ones, people in their households, people in their communities, people at work,
Right.
um, that they want to better communicate with, but they don't know how or they struggle with it. And so that's who we're after.
Right. It's so, you just don't know who, when you're going to encounter somebody. And it's just so, to me, I've learned it's best just to pause
Yeah,
before, and rather than reacting. When I was younger, of course, I would have reacted.
yeah,
I think it's something we learn as we learn from our experiences, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think, we don't know all the information, right? And that's kind of why it's hard to, people ask me sometimes for my opinion on something, like, I can't give you, my answer is, I'll say I can't give an opinion,
yeah.
because I'll give an opinion on something I'm really knowledgeable about,
Right.
maybe. Right. But like raising two boys, right? I have some
Yeah.
opinions on that.
You're right. But even your opinion is one data point, right?
Yes.
It's one data point based on your experiences, the things you've been through, all these things. And that's why I love what we talk about in the book is this concept of naive realism, which is really kind of more of a psychological theory. And really at the core of this theory is that we believe that we see the world objectively and without bias. That's
Right.
naive realism. That we expect that others will come to the same conclusions that we did if they just are exposed to the same information. And so that's why we keep telling people the same thing, because we're just like, if they can just hear what I'm saying, that they'll come to the same conclusion. And then we also, part of naive realism is that if others disagree, we assume that they are either uninformed, they're irrational, or that they're biased, or even just lying. And with those truths about how our brains work and how we show up in those moments, it behooves us, to, even though you had two boys, right? It's just like I could talk to somebody else who lives in the exact same area that you live, who is your exact similar background, comes from a similar place, same age, all these kind of things, 29, I'm assuming. And they'll
Yeah.
tell you the
Right.
exact they'll tell you that they had different type of experiences, right? And that their journey is different.
And everybody's journey is different. And also, I was talking to someone several weeks ago on the podcast, and he said he made a point that he and I are going to remember this conversation differently, right? We're going to, I shouldn't say differently, but highlights of certain things differently, because there's some emotion attached to a conversation, right?
100%. Our backgrounds, our upbringing, the things that have shaped us. That's why I love the whole concept of seeing everybody as someone new. Like I call it the beginner's mindset, right? Where I'm like, oh, let me be a beginner with this person, rather than bringing in all these assumptions and things that I think I know about this person because I'm all knowing, right? And that's the beauty of learning about people.
Oh, I like that. Think it as a beginning, right? You just
Yeah.
need to just not think about your experiences. But it is hard for some people. It is.
Hard
We
for
have,
a lot of people, including me. It's
right.
still hard for me, right? Because that's how our brains want to work, right? So I think that's one of the reasons, like our pillar one is challenge your perspective, and that's one of the reasons I created some of the pieces that go into that is because I realized I was not living up to my mom's ideals. I was not leaving my home base. I was living within my circles of comfort. And I created a thing at that time called the 6 months challenge, which later became the Circles of Grace challenge, which is essentially is this. Every 6 to 12 months, I challenge myself to go to events, experiences, or engage with people in either which I don't know a lot about or I disagree with. And that's been a really practical way people have leaned into that. We've taken the Ford Family Foundation through that, and others, that it creates a moment of learning, because when we exercise those muscles, Bridget, like it helps us in those moments of disagreements. And that's why that's the first pillar, because it happens before any disagreement even occurs.
Right. That's true. So how many pillars are in your that you came up with?
5 pillars.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 pillars. 5 pillars of bridging the divide.
I like that. I mean, it's to help break it down like that, and it helps you understand and learn a little bit more one step at a time, rather than you're keeping it simple rather than cramming a lot of info. I should say cramming, but that some people try to cram it to do it too fast.
Yes. Yes, I mean, even for me, I'm a researcher. So part of my aspect of understanding the research is I've read a lot of the books, a lot of things, and it's very complex. Our goal was to make this simple. We created the book in a way that people could pick it up like, oh, this is doable, right? So a lot of the things that we placed, we was like, how do we make this effective, focused on progress, not perfection, but in also in a simple way that people can lean in. And so those 5 pillars, it could have been 100 pillars, right? We could have had
Right.
an encyclopedia of respectful disagreement. But
Yes.
these were the 5 pillars that rose to the top, and helped to simplify the conversation.
It also helps you be when you're simplifying it. You're just more open, and some people being to this new information, right? Rather than I hear people, I've been guilty of this, getting overwhelmed by information
Yeah.
sometimes. And
Yeah. And our focus, I'm the same way with you, Bridget. It's one of the reasons I can't walk into a Barnes and Nobles today. I feel so overwhelmed with all that I don't know. And
Mhm.
so sometimes the approach is, again, there's multiple approaches for different people. Our approach has been, how do we make this accessible but practical that people can lean in? And we operate from what we call a heart, head, hand model. And because most people focus on the head, what should you know? Our focus first is not what should you know. Our focus is first is why you should know it and
Oh,
why it's
wow.
important. And then the head, and then here's what you can do, the hand. And that's why we want to be more than information providers. We want to be part of the transformation process, and
That's
we try to give people the tools to do that.
that's important. And you're sharing, I'm assuming stories, and I haven't read the book, but it's in there because that helps you connect with the readers or
Yes.
people rather than just having all this plan or whatever schedule. You need to have stories what other people have gotten from, excuse me.
Yeah.
But it's so important what you're doing. You're cultivating their curiosity in a way as well, right? Curiosity
Yeah.
is so important. That's why I'm still here. I think because I've had health issues, I was curious.
Yeah.
But just to find there's not one right right way to do everything, and everybody is different.
100%. I mean, stories are real living, right?
Yes,
Like
it
we
is.
are in those moments where we fill the book, like every chapter starts with a story. All right. And some of them are my own, of the things that I've encountered, times where I've messed up, or I've been disrespectfully disagreed with people. And I often tell people that while writing on my writing retreat for I Respectfully Disagree, I disrespectfully disagreed with the guy who was on my retreat, right? So this is not a place about, if you just do these 5 steps, you'll be perfect and awesome and everything will be great. It's like what you see above me is a tortoise. And it's one of my favorite fables, right? The tortoise and the hare. And we often wrongly label the tortoise as slow growing up. The tortoise was not slow, Bridget. The
Right.
tortoise was strategic.
Yes, strategic.
That's what I love. We only call the tortoise slow compared to the hare, and we saw what happened. So our focus is through the stories, through telling people, here's how ways to make progress. Here's where people have messed up, including myself. Here's ways that you can lean in.
I like the honesty of that, sharing the mistake you made, right? That is very, very helpful.
Yes.
For
And I made a lot of them.
yes, I learn more from reading that kind of stuff rather
Yeah.
than things being perfect, because then you'll feel bad because, oh, I'm not perfect. That's what I think has held some people back. I'm guilty of trying to be perfect
Yeah.
in the past because that was I guess my environment that I was in. I had to be perfect because you're a girl, like, that kind of thing. And but I got out of that. So like these podcasts aren't perfect,
Yeah.
but we learn. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this, because I love to continue learning. It is the curiosity, and you're right. You've got to be. There's nothing wrong with that, and
Yes.
no matter what your age. Excuse me, I almost said old. Whatever your age is.
Are you calling me old, Bridget?
No,
All right, we're gonna have a conversation.
know, but like everybody, it's just every situation is different, and I think it's also important to put yourself in different environments.
Yeah.
Um, to put yourself out of your comfort zone sometimes. And I think reflecting on me growing up, I'm an army brat, military
Yeah.
brat. That helped me. I didn't realize at the time to handle change a little
Yeah.
bit. I mean, I'm not saying it was perfect, but I could, because we were used to, it still wasn't easy, but I think that helped adapt. Now, still, you can get attached to things still. We're
Yeah.
guilty of that.
Yeah. Which is pretty normal. I mean, and that's one of the things I think we all get attached to things in different ways. With our upbringing, our story, the projection of who we want people to think about us. And that's why you've hit the head on the nail. Pillar number two is be the student, where we focus more on listening and learning rather than lecturing, and just approaching people from this posture of there's something I can learn. But pillar number three is one you really hit on, and that's cultivate your curiosity. You actually even said the exact the phrase.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I was just like, okay, Bridget, you didn't read the book, but you know the pillars. But yeah, so cultivate your curiosity is when you fill in the gaps with more curiosity rather than conclusions. And I've realized I've done that a lot. Like it's easy for us to fill in the gaps with conclusions of what we think we know, why we think we know it, rather than simply asking to hear stories. And that's one of the things that we encourage people to do. That's one of the things I talk about what I've learned and what I've gotten wrong when I heard and listened to other people's stories, and then even sometimes what I've gotten right. Right? It's not always about, I learned, oh, I talked to somebody and my whole perspective was changed. Sometimes I've talked to people and my perspective was confirmed. But at least I took the moment to engage in firsthand knowledge, firsthand experience, and identify for myself is what I'm hearing true, at least for this one individual or several individuals that I encountered.
Right. That's a really good statement that you said. It's just so, I know, I'm just thinking back as you're talking, all these experiences that I've had, and I've learned. I was part of a cohort one time. You know what a cohort is, from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
As all MBA through Seth Godin. I was of the beta group, but I was scared to death. But I met these great people, and we brought out the best in each other
Yeah.
as we were able to work on these quote projects using what skill we could bring forth. I didn't realize some of the skills that I had, but that's because you don't, I don't look for problems, but they pop up.
Right. Problem somehow seems to find me. But yeah, that to your point, like our backgrounds have shaped us. Chapter three is actually one of my favorite chapters in the book because it's called A Picture of the Past. And it really challenges people, including myself, to identify their LDMs, or what we call life disagreement markers. And it's really, those listening, when you think back over the journey of your life, how did you see disagreement modeled in your home? How did you see it happen in your early career? What impacted or shaped you, right? Like for me, part of my life disagreement markers was one of them was physical and emotional abuse I faced by a brother who was 8 years older than me when I
Oh,
was
wow.
6. And I didn't really understand it. And as I dove deeper into it with my therapist and different things, I better understood that the reason I was a very aggressive, disrespectful disagreeer, at least verbally, and never reached a point of physical, was because I was no longer going to be that little helpless boy that couldn't defend himself. And I was going to attack you verbally before you attacked me.
Right.
And so I think understanding our past and thinking about, how disrespect or respect or disagreement was modeled in your home, it's important about how we may live it out in our everyday lives.
Right. It's right. We all have a different background and different siblings. I should say siblings, but my mom was married 3 times by the time I was 17. So
Yeah.
that was affected me.
Yeah.
And, but not, that's why I had to be perfect. I think,
Yeah.
and I'm the middle child, and most middle children are considered wild, and I was not. I was the
Yeah.
I was the calm one. I don't know. I'm not saying compared to the other two. How's that?
Right.
I mean,
I was like, you calm? No.
I was like the that's just something I knew, I saw, I got to fix this. That's kind of, I was always trying to fix things, right? I mean, not physically, but let's calm it down, people. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
use people, but
Yeah.
and my brother he protected me because I was a girl, you know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of, I can just, I joke now, Justin, that, and now I know I didn't have dates in high school because my older brother.
Your brother. Yeah. They're
It's,
sneaky guys.
oh, that's her brother. Stay away from her. I mean, he was a good, nice person, but he was like, that's my sister. You know, that's
Yeah.
was just being, I think because we didn't have a stable father, right?
Yeah.
So he became, I'm just laughing about it. I'm just saying this because everybody has a different, I just thank God I have a really great relationship with my older brother, just
Yeah.
because, but he had to take care of his little sister. And then we had another sister, and she was from a different, my mom's second husband, but they're all, I look back, they're all had good positive experiences. I think that's, I had to acknowledge, we all have to acknowledge anything that wasn't good. But then
Yeah. And
I,
still good.
yeah, and the stuff that's good, I
Yeah.
focus on what is good. And that's why I talk about focusing on what's important. That's kind of helps you get through tough times. And I think we need to be, you know, really open. I like what your book is about, just open to different points of view, and it'll help you grow as a person, right?
100%. I mean, that's pillar number 4 is actually seek the gray. And it's, most people don't know when they look at the book, it's like a diagonal, it's like black and white, and then, but most people can't see there's a very thin line of gray in between the black and white. And that's what real life is, right?
Yes.
It's so much more gray, and it's about how do we identify the common ground? How is this, how can this be looked at from different perspectives? But one thing that, and I like to give them balanced perspectives. One thing that has been shared a lot that we begin to start challenging is this whole concept of being open-minded. And yes, I do believe that there's times we should be open-minded and here, but Bridget, there's just things that you and I and every reader, we're closed-minded on based upon our values, our character, our systems and things in place. But our big heartbeat to people is that even when we are closed-minded, we should never stop being open-hearted.
Yeah.
And that there are ways that we can always, which is pillar 5, is agree to respect people. It's always our choice. We can always fully acknowledge people. There's a whole body of research on this called conversational receptiveness that talks about ways that we can better engage people. And so something as simple as like, Bridget, I really appreciate you choosing to have this conversation with me. What you shared, I've never heard before. Or, wow, Bridget, you mentioned 3 things, and number 2 really stood out to me. I want to dive deeper into that. I appreciate you sharing that. Or, Bridget, wow, this was a tough conversation, and I really appreciate you leaning in because you didn't have to. Thank you. Not one of those times did I say I agree with you, Bridget, but each of those moments was an opportunity to fully acknowledge you. Yeah,
You are respecting the person, and
yes,
that makes them feel better. And
100%.
you're not going to have a negative reaction, right?
Yeah. Well, some people, there will be some people that call you to the carpet and be like, no, but what about what I said, right? And
That's their personality.
yes, yeah, and I'm like, thank you. I have to do more exploration, or one of the things that we encourage people, because some people say, well, is respectful disagreement mean you're a doormat? No, it doesn't, right? Because you can express your view, but one of the things I have done myself and encourage people to do is, one, you don't always have to share your perspective. Sometimes it's not important for you to share it. It's just great to listen, right? Allow the other person to be heard. Number 2, if I have a different perspective, I ask to share my perspective. And I know that goes countercultural to today's society where I can go online and post anything I want to. But if you're having a disagreement, Bridget, I'm gonna say, hey, Bridget, thank you for sharing your perspective. I think I better understand, what you're sharing about this. And I'm saying, hey, Bridget, are you open to me sharing my perspective?
That's good.
Right. And now what that does is, one, if you say no, why am I wasting my breath? Um, and I leave the bridge open. Like, hey, if you're ever open to another conversation in the future, I'd be open to having that. Or if you say yes, what you've done is now physiologically opened yourself up to be able to receive what I'm going to say, versus me just ramming my ideas and my thought process on you, and then it just creates these defensive walls that we don't seem to get past. And so those are really practical ways people can agree to respect.
But based on what you're saying, and I'm processing. You're a really good communicator, Justin, right?
It's
That is
taken time.
right. It took time, right? But you've learned and how to communicate properly. You learned
Yeah.
from others' experiences. And I think it's great that you created this book because especially I think we need it in this day and age. We've always needed it, but it
Yeah.
just seems I agree with you on the social media aspect. It focuses, just I thank God I didn't have a phone or social media when I was young. You don't
Oh
know
yeah.
what we would have done. I was not glued to a screen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it
Same thing.
affects them. It affects them, and I think that's something what you're talking about. I don't know if you're, offering that to or not for training, but to companies or for schools. I just think what you're doing and it's just what was going in my mind here.
Yeah, we do a lot of work with especially companies from Fortune 50 to associations, and so we've been doing a lot of training workshops, courses coming out, all that good stuff. But the real heartbeat of this is we just encouraging people to practice, to lean in, to say, hey, you're not going to be perfect, and that's okay. It's about making progress. And people would say, oh, you're a great communicator, like you said, and I'm like, yeah, but it took a lot of learning, a lot of
Yeah.
mistakes, a lot of growth, a lot of like, oh, I got that wrong. Oh, I said that wrong. Oh, I just told somebody my perspective without them sharing. And even when I know this stuff, there are still moments, that I still operate from that place. Now, guess what it's allowed me to do? It's allowed me to apologize quicker and to go back through the pillars to better learn. And that's the growth, right? The growth isn't that we're going to get it perfect. The growth is what do we learn from it when we get it wrong.
Right. I love that. So for the listeners, do you think is one big takeaway uh, from this conversation for them?
I think one big takeaway is that we can't control anybody, right? The only person we can control is who? Our kids. And so I'm joking. I tried it. It doesn't work.
I know.
That does not work. But we can only control ourselves. And sometimes we're just called to be seed planters. I'll tell you this really quick story. One of my former colleagues, the former skinhead, very harmful views towards other people. And I was really curious about his journey in and his journey out. And he was like, Justin, I loved when people called me names. I loved when they called me this and this and that. He's like, that fueled us. He said the thing that were the catalyst of change were the very same people that we disrespect and demean that showed me respect. He was like, because over time, those were seeds that were planted that I just couldn't compute, still demeaning them while they respected me. And he's like, those were those moments of change. And so I say to all those who are listening, what if even when people are disrespecting you, your role, your opportunity is to simply be a seed planter because you never know the impact that you can have on others. And guess what, y'all? That's real living.
I love that. That is so awesome. So where can people connect with you or learn more about you, Justin?
Yeah, so you can find out a lot more at howtorespectfullydisagree.com. We actually have our quiz coming that shows where you are on the disagreement continuum. But then also LinkedIn, Justin Jones-Fosu on there. And I just really appreciate your heart for this work, Bridget.
This is awesome. I love to help people and I'm learning just having this conversation, the way you're verbalizing. I just love this.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. And for those that are listening, I'll include the links that Justin just mentioned in the description and have a great day.
Bye, y'all.